Hi, I'm Tony Robbins, sitting in for Piers Morgan. Tonight, Billionaires Row. What if you get three of the most successful men in this country to tackle America's biggest problems? These are the men who've done the impossible. Mark Cuban, billionaire owner of the Dallas Mavericks.
Business is a sport, and I just have always got to be competing. I've got to always try to win.
The king of Vegas, Steve Wynn.
The idea of building something that would make people go wow has struck me as just about the coolest thing in the world to do.
And T. Boone Pickens, who built his own oil company and did even better after he left it. Three of America's biggest success stories on keeping America great.
I would get out of the Mideast is what I'd do.
Because what they say could help everyone.
The most patriotic thing you can do as an American is get filthy, stinking rich, and then pay lots in taxes so we can do all these things we talked about.
This is Piers Morgan Tonight. I'm Tony Robbins, in for Piers Morgan. Tonight I'm going to be with three men that probably can come up with some real solutions to get America growing again. They've certainly done that in huge businesses. We begin with Mark Cuban, the billionaire owner of the Dallas Mavericks, who started out in business at the age of 12 selling garbage sacks because his dad wouldn't give him a pair of sneakers. He went around and founded a company called Broadcast.com that after 5 years he sold for $5.9 billion to Yahoo. Then he turned around and paid $285 million for the Dallas Mavericks and turned a losing team into the 2011 NBA champs. Not bad. Mark Cuban joins me right now. Hey, Mark.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you. I see you noticed the ring.
That is a beautiful ring.
This is some Coach Carlisle gave me that because I'd helped him work with your team that year.
I get chills every time I see it. It's just
so
crazy.
Big, you can't wear the darn thing.
I know, I can't wear it at all.
Tell me something. You are been described a lot of different ways. I've wanted to meet you for a long time. Passionate, outrageous, playful. You've taken business and turned business into a sport. Yep. Incredibly successful. I think hunger is the strongest and most important element to success in anybody I've ever met. And you seem to have this insatiable hunger and passion. Now, I'm a passionate guy, but I don't have $2 million worth of fines for the NBA referees, right? But tell me something. Where does that passion come from in you? And tell me, if people think they don't have it, do they have it? How can they find it? And how do you keep it?
You know, that's a great question because I don't know if I'm wired that way. I kind of feel like I am, but I'm just the most competitive guy that you'll ever meet. To me, like you were saying, business is a sport, and I just have always got to be competing. I've got to always try to win. And I wasn't good enough at athletics, but when I got into business, I realized that I wasn't just competing against an opponent for 48 minutes in a game or 60 minutes. You're competing against everybody who ever might compete with you, and that just keeps me going.
That's the whole world.
That's the whole world, right? And there's always some 18-year-old kid trying to come in and kick your butt. And to me, that keeps me young, that keeps me motivated, that keeps me hungry, because I never want to get kicked off that perch.
Do you agree that hunger is the most important element? I'm curious, or do you disagree? I see people very smart, very educated, but they're not hungry, and they never maximize their abilities. What do you think?
I think it's effort. So if hunger creates effort, then yes, absolutely, it's about hunger. Because I think so many people always talk about their dreams. You know, I think the biggest lie in all of business, if you will, or all of mentoring is follow your dreams. Because if you think about it, we all have dreams. You know, I started off wanting to be a baseball player. Then I dreamed of this, I dreamed of that, right? And then you realize that where you should go is where your effort takes you. You find yourself, I practiced baseball and basketball and loved it, but then I found myself spending more time with business and learning about business and running business or being involved with business. It was really my effort that drove me. So I always tell people, don't follow your dreams, follow your effort. Where are you willing to put in the time? Where are you hungry enough to put in the time? Because that's where you'll get results.
What about timing? You know, so often in life you see really good people who fail, and I find it's not because they didn't try or they didn't have the effort. They did the right thing at the wrong time.
No question.
You know, you look around, you see people buying a house for 100 years, right thing to do, roughly. You know, 2007, wrong time. You're down 30, 60%.
I bought houses at the worst time. But you're right. Timing, in a lot of respect, timing is relative to scale.
Yes.
So when I started my first business, I had just gotten fired from a job, and I didn't have a choice, and I went the next 7 years without a vacation, sold the company for $6 million. So I was 29, and I was retired. Bought a lifetime pass in American Airlines, and, you know, I was great.
Did you just go party?
Like a madman.
I can see you doing that, Martin. That would not be difficult for you.
Not at all, man. It's in my nature. So I went nuts, right? And so I wasn't in a position to buy a sports team. I wasn't in a position to change the world, but I was comfortable, and if I was willing to live like a student, I was set for life. But then my next business came along, and it happened to be, we started the business of streaming.
Yes.
And this is 1995, which is right when internet stocks started going nuts. And there's no question that had my next business not happened when the whole internet bubble had come along, I wouldn't be worth billions of dollars.
What was your company worth? What were the revenues of your company when you sold it for $5.9 billion?
Well, we were doing about 20, well, the last public quarter, I think, was 13 million, then 18 million, then I think our last one after we sold was 25 million for the quarter and break even.
Wow, and that's just revenue.
Yeah, that's just revenue, but you got to realize it wasn't 5.9 in cash,
yeah,
right?
We got I want to get to that because, you know, a lot of people have said, well, a guy like Mark, he's so lucky, and I hate when I see that. Sometimes people are lucky.
Oh, I am lucky. I'm the first to tell you I'm lucky.
But you got out of that Yahoo stock before it went down also.
Yeah, I didn't say I was stupid.
but I'm just saying, you've seen, you know, can you make your own luck by putting yourself in the right position? Because I think a lot of people see themselves as, you know, the season hits me, rather than saying, look, I got to look at what season we're in and say, how do I take advantage of winter? Have you done that throughout your life?
Yeah,
you know, you're one of the first HDNet guys. You seem to always say, where's the next edge I can be on? So if I win big.
I always try to change the game, right? Because there's just starting and running a business, and then I sit there and I say, okay, look, I'm not the best programmer. I'm not the most technical guys. But with sales ability, with business ability, and with technical ability, then I can walk in and I can say, what can I do to change? So whether creating the first high-definition television network, right. HDNet in 2001, in 2006, we sat down, we have a company, Magnolia Pictures, that's the distribution company.
Yes.
We said, oh, look, this model is not working. Spending all this money to promote a movie and then just, you know, praying that people show up is a bad model. So I looked at the technology of television and said that video on demand on TV is going to explode.
Right.
And so we said, let's take the movies we're distributing and put them on VOD where people can make an impulse buy just with their remote control and buy our movies first. Then, because we own Landmark Theaters, then put them in theaters. And so we went from a company losing money to a company that never lost money on a movie, or rarely lost, and always made money as a company. And now everybody's trying to copy us. And so that's what I try to look for.
It's amazing. You're always finding that competitive edge. One of the competitive edges you've done with Mavericks is you took the team that had been in one playoff in 20 years.
Yeah, we got voted the worst professional sports franchise of the 90s for the decade before I bought them.
So now, a year later, you get them in the playoffs. Yep. You know, 6 years later, I was there in Dallas, and my buddy Pat Riley was there and rooting against you.
Yeah, he was a happier guy than I was then.
But then 2011, you become champions. That kind of turnaround doesn't just happen.
Right.
You brought an innovative leadership, and you brought leaders into the group.
Yep.
I think you and I both agree leadership is the cutting edge. We're about to decide who our leader is going to be for the next 4 years.
Yep.
So you look under a John Wooden, you and I both know, he had different players, and he won 10 out of 12 championships,
Incredible.
7 in a row.
Yep.
How valuable is the coach or leader? And I guess here's the real question. What is the most important qualities in a leader today? How do you know if they got the right stuff? And how do you know whether you let them go at a tough time or will you stay with them?
It's always really tough with coaches, right? Like they always tell you, coaches are hired to be fired.
Yes.
And with Rick Carlisle, our mutual friend and our coach, one of Rick's strengths, and I think this is critical, particularly in sports leadership, you not only have to know what you're good at, you have to know what you're not good at.
Yes.
And that's one of Rick's incredible strengths. He doesn't try to tell you or mislead you or sell you on what he's not. He says, here's what I'm great at, here's what I'm not so good. And he'll say, look, if you can provide me support for those not so good things, I'm going to take advantage of it. And that's my job in my leadership role to say, how can I put everybody in a position to succeed so we can get a few more of these, you know?
How do you keep that hunger alive? A lot of teams, you know, the guys like, you know, the Bulls back in the days of Jordan, three-peating, they never lost that hunger edge. How do you do that? Because once guys get it.
That part's not hard because once you taste it, I mean, you just got to go back for more, you know? It's that great tasting champagne, you know? It's like you don't want, or steak. Yes. No one ever just has one steak, you know? You always want to go back and get more.
Back. Tell me, you've been, one of the reasons I wanted you on the show is because we have some people here that are more Republican-oriented. You've been Democratic and Republican. I've seen you ripping up both sides.
Both sides.
I like that recently you were talking about the blog about the Republicans saying we're not better off than 4 years ago. Address that. Are we better off?
Yes.
Are we the same? Where are we?
Individually, it just depends on your own personal circumstances that you may or may not be better off. As a country, if you go back 4 years ago, you know, here we are in September. September 2008, where 4 or 5 are the biggest one-day drops in the Dow. Mm-hmm. When you're watching the stock market go up and down like a yo-yo, trillions of dollars, you know, people have no certainty whatsoever. At the same time, we're sitting there talking about being in the throes of the Great Recession. And not only were we in the throes of a Great Recession, but we didn't know if we were leading towards a depression.
Right.
We didn't know what was going to happen with banks. We certainly didn't know what was going to happen with housing.
Right.
Complete uncertainty. And so, you know, today we're worried about the fiscal cliff. Back then, we had no certainty on our whole financial system. The fact that we got through that uncertainty speaks volumes that we're far better off today than we were back then.
When we come back, I'd like to ask you about President Obama, and
Sure.
I'd like to ask you about Mitt Romney, and get a clear idea of where you think this country needs to go. What does the leadership need to provide, whoever we pick, for things to really begin to prosper going forward?
Very good.